In 1465, France was a fractured land, its fields and towns still bearing the scars of decades of war and unrest. The country was ruled by powerful nobles who saw themselves as kings in their own right, each controlling vast territories and private armies. The monarchy's authority barely reached beyond Paris, and the idea of a unified kingdom was a threat to the old order that had long dominated French life. The end of the 100 Years' War left a power vacuum, and ambitious dukes like Charles of Berry and Francis of Brittany guarded their privileges fiercely, refusing to yield to royal demands. Into this storm stepped Louis XVII, a cunning, ruthless king determined to centralize power and break the grip of the feudal lords. His vision was bold, a France where all authority flowed from the crown, not the feudal lords, and where the king's word was law across the land. The great nobles, fearing for their survival and the loss of their ancient rights, formed the League of the Public Weal to resist him, uniting old rivals against a common enemy. They claimed to fight for the people, but in truth it was a desperate bid to preserve their own power and privileges, even if it meant plunging the kingdom into chaos. As armies gathered and banners were raised, France stood on the brink, not just of rebellion, but of a full-scale civil war that threatened to tear the nation apart. The fate of the kingdom hung in the balance, as the struggle between crown and nobility would decide the future of France for generations to come. Louis XI, known as the Universal Spider, spun webs of intrigue from his Loire castles, weaving a network of spies and informants that stretched across France and beyond. He valued loyalty and skill over noble blood, alienating the old aristocracy who saw their influence slipping away with every royal decree. Through bold reforms, Louis built a standing army and a reliable tax base, strengthening the crown's authority and making the monarchy less dependent on feudal lords for military support or money. Opposing him, the League of the Public Weal united France's mightiest nobles, led by his own brother, Charles of Berry, and Charles the Bold of Burgundy, both determined to defend their ancient privileges. Their true aim was clear: to halt Louis's centralization and restore their feudal privileges, hoping to preserve the old order that had benefited them for centuries. This was a clash of visions, modern monarchy versus feudal tradition, with the future of France hanging in the balance. The nobles feared losing their ancient rights and independence. Louis saw them as obstacles to progress, determined to break their power for the sake of a unified realm. Compromise was impossible. One side had to break, and both knew the stakes were nothing less than the soul of the kingdom. The League's gamble was a final, desperate stand to defend the old order, risking everything in open rebellion against the king. Louis's response was relentless. He used cunning diplomacy, secret alliances, and calculated moves to undermine their power at every turn. The stage was set for a decisive confrontation, one that would shape the destiny of France for generations to come. In summer 1465, the League's armies closed in on Paris from all sides. Louis, racing north with a smaller but unified force, aimed to reach the capital before his enemies could unite. The key, Montlhéry, a strategic town south of Paris. Whoever controlled it would control the approach to the capital. Charles the Bold's Burgundians moved to block Louis's path. Both sides knew a clash was inevitable. The fields around Montlhéry became the stage for a battle that would decide France's future. As night fell on July 15th, both armies prepared for a fight neither could afford to lose. The fate of the monarchy would be decided by the sword. France braced for a turning point. The Battle of Montlhéry, July 16, 1465, was chaos. Charles the Bold's reckless cavalry charge shattered the royal left, but the centre held firm under Louis's leadership. Amid the confusion, Louis rallied his men, narrowly escaping capture. Charles's knights, chasing fleeing foes, lost cohesion and left their own lines exposed. The royalists counterattacked, splitting the battle into scattered, desperate melees. Dust and smoke blinded commanders. Banners vanished in the turmoil. Charles was wounded, his army in disarray. By nightfall, both sides were battered and exhausted. No clear victor emerged, only devastation. As darkness fell over the blood-soaked fields, both sides hurried to claim victory at Montlhéry, each eager to shape the story for their own cause. The League's forces held the ground where the fighting ended, but Louis XV achieved what truly mattered. He escaped with his army intact and managed to reach the safety of Paris, the heart of his kingdom. The rebels loudly boasted of their triumph, parading their supposed victory, but the king's grip on the capital, the true seat of power, remained unbroken. The outcome of the battle was shrouded in ambiguity, emboldening the restless nobles and leaving the fate of France hanging in the balance, more uncertain than ever. The League's armies soon encircled Paris, laying siege to the city, while Louis, weakened but far from defeated, began to prepare for a new kind of fight, one that would be waged with words and alliances rather than swords. The kingdom now teetered precariously between two masters. The king, secure within Paris, and the nobles, powerful and determined, camped outside its walls. One wrong move, one miscalculation, could have spelled the end of royal authority and plunged France into chaos. Instead of risking everything in another battle, Louis turned to negotiation, seeking to divide his enemies and outmaneuver them through cunning diplomacy. The inconclusive clash at Montlhéry set the stage for a long and bitter struggle of wits, where every move could tip the balance of power. In the end, France's fate would be decided not by the sword, but by the art of cunning negotiation and the careful plotting of its leaders. Surrounded in Paris, Louis VI signed the humiliating Treaty of Confronts, granting lands and privileges to the nobles. The League celebrated, believing they had tamed the king, but Louis saw the treaty as a temporary truce, not a defeat. The nobles, satisfied with their spoils, dispersed, their unity shattered. Louis exploited their rivalries, using espionage and political maneuvering to isolate them. Over the next 2 decades, he reclaimed lost lands and dismantled the power of the great houses. The death of Charles the Bold allowed Louis to absorb Burgundy, cementing royal authority. Montlhéry was a turning point, a tactical draw, but a strategic lesson for the king. Louis learned to avoid open battle and rely on cunning. By outmaneuvering his foes, he laid the foundations for a unified modern France.